Tito Muñoz leads the Phoenix Symphony in two works by Richard Strauss, his witty tome poem Till Eulenspiegel's Merry Pranks, and his aptly named Four Last Songs, a noble statement about a life well lived, featuring radiant soprano Maria Valdes as soloist. The dynamic pianist Conrad Tao joins the orchestra for Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 4, a pinnacle of the repertoire, as well as the final work for piano and orchestra that Beethoven performed personally. Opening the program is Christopher Cerrone's The Age of Wire and String, a 6-part orchestral suite that Cerrone composed especially for his good friend Tito Muñoz to premiere. Christopher Cerrone is internationally acclaimed for compositions characterized by a subtle handling of timbre and resonance, a deep literary fluency, and a flair for multimedia collaborations. Cerrone holds degrees from Yale and the Manhattan School of Music. He is on the composition faculty at Manist School of Music and lives in Brooklyn with his wife. The Age of Wire and String was originally conceived as a ballet, but came to life as an orchestral suite at the encouragement of Christopher Cerrone's good friend and the Virginia G. Piper music director of the Phoenix Symphony, Tito Muñoz. The title is drawn from an experimental novel by author Ben Marcus. His idea of a wind gun inspired the opening of the work, a blast of air from the brass. Because of its dance origins, Wire and String takes the simplest of possible ideas, an evenly pulsed, repeating note, and then subjects it to a series of transformations over 18 minutes. The work is set in 6 chapters. The Age of Wire and String was commissioned by Elizabeth and Justus Schlichting and is dedicated to Tito Muñoz. In 1808, Beethoven conducted the public debuts of his 5th and 6th symphonies, the 4th Piano Concerto, and the Choral Fantasy, as well as a few other excerpts and piano improvisations. Reports from the concert bemoaned the surplus of music, the hall's frigid temperature, and a sloppy orchestra. The Choral Fantasy ground to a complete halt, at which point Beethoven returned to the beginning and prolonged the concert even further. The 4th Piano Concerto left spectators particularly baffled, and the work remained largely untouched until Felix Mendelssohn revived it in 1836. The mystery begins when the piano enters alone, spinning out a simple harmonic progression marked piano dolce, quiet and sweet. Then, after the piano leaves a chord hanging, the soloist withdraws, and the strings enter in a totally foreign new key. Unexpected harmonic transitions continue to crop up throughout the first movement, keeping with the quizzical mood established at the outset. Additionally, the main theme of the finale never begins in the proper key, even when it appears moments from the end, attesting to the sleight of hand that defines this most elusive of Beethoven's piano concertos. Some of the very first compositions by Richard Strauss were the simple songs he wrote starting at the age of 6, to be sung by his Aunt Joanna at family gatherings. Nearly 80 years later, he was still writing songs in the waning days of a career that had brought him to the pinnacle of modern music, first as a composer of tone poems, and then as an opera innovator. The 4 songs for soprano and orchestra that he composed while in Switzerland between May and September of 1948 turned out to be his final major work. The song that Strauss wrote first, and which was eventually placed last in the set, used a text by Joseph Freiherr von Eichendorff, one of Germany's leading poets of the 19th century and a source of inspiration for Strauss since his boyhood. The other 3 texts came from the German-Swiss writer Hermann Hesse, whose pacifism and support of Jewish intellectuals had led his work to be blacklisted in Nazi Germany. When preparing the songs for posthumous publication in 1950, Strauss's editor placed spring at the front of the set, with its quivering sense of yearning and possibility. The second song, September, marks a transition, with the death of summer hinting at deeper losses to come. Within the weariness of the third song, While Going to Sleep, an extended violin solo offers a luminous counterpoint. Time seems to stand still as the cycle closes in the twilight, with the orchestra pondering the hanging question for a few meditative minutes after the soprano asks, "Is this perhaps death?" Up to the point when Richard Strauss accepted his first professional post at the age of 21, His musical personality reflected the influence of his father, Franz Strauss, the greatest horn player of the era, and a staunch traditionalist devoted to Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven. Besides sharing his discerning tastes, Franz also ran an amateur orchestra that would read through young Richard's scores, an extraordinary resource for a budding orchestral composer and conductor. A whole new world opened up for Strauss when he began working as the conducting assistant for Hans von Bülow at the Meiningen Court Orchestra in 1885. His new friend, Alexander Ritter, a violinist in the orchestra and nephew-in-law of Wagner, encouraged Strauss to try writing a symphonic poem, and Strauss ended up writing 4 between 1886 and 1889. After a hiatus, Strauss returned in 1894 to the genre that he preferred to call Tondichtung, or tone poem. His next subject was Till Eulenspiegel, a trickster character from German folklore. Strauss had tried adapting Till's colorful antics into an opera, but the scenario was a little thin for a full-fledged theatrical work, so he redirected his ideas into a concert work, after the old Rogue's Tale, set in rondo form, as he defined it in the subtitle. The most explicit character is Till himself, represented by a jocular horn theme. Another recurring motive, introduced by the clarinet, suggests Till's peals of laughter as various pranks ensue.